Tap on 072-567-1567. Your calls anytime on 021-446-0567. Peter Setou, welcome back. It's great to have you back.
Thank you very much, Clarence, for having me. And good morning to your listeners.
Just in terms of recapping on a previous conversation that we've had with you, we're celebrating 30 years of democracy this year. And the land reform, land reform still stands out as a critical topic, especially given the political manifestos that have come out. You are on the record. You have said we've under-delivered in this particular category of reform. So many other categories, I guess, we have under-delivered on as well. Just who's to blame for that under-delivery, Peter?
Yeah, I think, Clarence, just to put things into perspective, I think as a starting point, it is important to reflect on the positive aspects of our land reform. For example, that it has contributed to a greater degree of political stability as it gave ordinary people hope that their plight is being addressed. I mean, if you look at most urban claims that were lodged, those were actually dealt with expeditiously through cash payouts, although the criticism that has always been leveled is that little attention was paid on how such monies that was given to beneficiaries was actually spent, in particular to ensure that it changes their lives. And some of the claims have really resulted in some significant benefit for beneficiaries. And I mean, a case in point here is a program that we've been running as an organization, Vumelana, that has demonstrated that collaboration with the private sector can make a huge impact where partnerships are actually promoted. But I mean, having said this, there's a myriad of challenges that impact on successful and sustainable land reform. And these, amongst others, include the absence of an appropriate framework legislation that would help to keep policymakers and implementers on track and accountable. Inadequate budgets and lack of post-settlement support. I think this is really one of the elephants in the room, that once people are provided with the land, there is no support that is provided to ensure that such beneficiaries of land reform are in a position to use this restored land productively, you know. And just to digress a bit, uncertainty about really what land reform should achieve so that we can be in a position to measure the result. Because a lot of people can say a lot of things about what land reform should do. I think we need a conversation as a country, as a nation, to say what is it that we would like to see land reform actually achieving, and agree on what is it that what are the anticipated results and how we can measure those results. Because if we cannot come up with those targets, then certainly there's no way in which we can actually measure them.
Yeah, I hear you. So let's get down to the fundamental element of land reform. Is that a title deed essentially accruing to somebody who has been maybe robbed of their land?
Well, the most important aspect to what you are actually raising, and this really in part relates to the restitution of land. I mean, we have a situation where land is actually restituted to communities that were actually dispossessed of land. And then as an important part of actually recognizing this and ensuring that there is proof that now this community actually owns this land, then title must be actually given to this community as proof that they own the land. And I think one should not underestimate the importance of having a title deed as the owner of land. You know, land tenure is really an important aspect, an element in land ownership. You know, access to ownership is therefore seen by many as really one way of getting out of poverty, hunger, and homelessness. You know, over and above restoring the dignity. Such tenure and ownership enables people to really build homesteads and access to much needed capital to start and scale up businesses or create new businesses, thus create jobs, etc. And also to embark on stuff like subsistence farming The most important element, and this is what a lot of people are always raising to say, because some of the people do not have this title, it's very difficult for them to really access capital, because when you go to any bank or any financial service provider and you want to get a loan, one of the things that they really need is something that shows that they can. You need to show them that you've got something that they can actually use as a basis to give you a specific loan.
And that title deed is the value that you're talking about, the value of
Absolutely.
the land that you are now owning. Okay, so that you say is then the principle of any consideration thereafter. That is the bottom line for any. I want to just drill down there. So so title deed accrues to disadvantaged and historically disadvantaged communities. Title deed accrues, and with that, the value of the land. If you can't work the land, should market forces not just come to play then?
Well, I think this is where the importance of post-settlement really comes into the picture. So, excuse me. I think one needs to understand the fact that at a point when people were actually dispossessed of their land, not only did they lose the land, they lost a lot of things over and above just losing the land. I mean, access to markets, a lot of things that they actually lost. Now, if you give people who have been disadvantaged for decades, surely you don't just give them the land. You need to also capacitate them such that they will be able to work that land. And this is where we are always referring to post-settlement support, so that they've got access to capital, so that they can work the land, so that they've got access to markets. Because it's one thing to produce whatever that you'll be working on in your respective land parcel, but it's something else. Once you've got this produce, you've got to take it out into the marketplace. So if you don't have access, then it's just self-defeating. So we are saying this is one of the critical aspects that government should actually look into. And we are saying, given the fact that government has got so many other issues that it must actually take care of, we believe that partnering with the private sector is one of the ways through which they can actually ensure that post-settlement can actually take place, and ensure that the land can be used productively.
I hear what you're saying. And I would maybe propose that maybe a small proportion of people looking for land restitution are necessarily wanting to work the land. Not all of us can be farmers. Anybody can be a radio presenter. I mean, look, I'm a radio presenter, so anybody can be a radio presenter, but not anybody. Some people just want a house, not necessarily the land.
I think what you are saying is quite correct. It's not everybody who wants to farm, and whatever interventions that government is putting in place, they need to take account of the fact that some people are not interested in farming, some actually need the land for housing purposes, etc.
Yeah, so sell the land and get your house. I mean, that's the rationale. Oh, my mind is taking me down that wormhole.
Are you referring to somebody who has got land and just selling that land that he can
buy the house? Yeah.
Well, I don't think one should discount that, and personally, I don't think we should really be patronizing, South Africans to say, if you've got the land, this is what you may do and this is what you may not do with the land. I think what's important is to educate our people to say, if you've got the land, these are different uses of land. But I don't think we should outrightly, bar people from actually using the land, including, where possible, sell the land so that they can really address some of their personal needs.
Okay. Now let's talk about the importance of land and why it is taking such prominence within political manifestos. What is the emotion that political parties are playing to?
Well, I think you're raising an important point. I mean, as one would expect, especially as we approaching the national elections, I mean, most of the political parties are really taking advantage of some of the gaps that are there in the land reform program, and as part of unveiling their manifestos, they're making reference to land reform and making all sorts of promises. And I think they're doing this because land reform is actually an emotive issue in South Africa, because of the history that we come from as a nation, and which is why the ruling party, when it came into power in the 90s, one of the first things that they introduced was land reform, and this really was anchored around different pillars, three main important pillars, which is really land restitution, the land tenure, as well as land redistribution. Now, to get back to your point, as we had expected, all major political parties are really out there and using land reform as one way through which they can lure the electorate, and they are promising different, and they've got different approaches to land reform. But I think what's important is we need to get back to the basics, as a nation, to say a lot of work has already been done around land reform. A lot of reports have already been commissioned to say what are the challenges in land reform, to identify what are the challenges, and also to say what is it that we need to do in order to address land reform. And I think these are some of the things that, as the electorate, we probably need to really look into what different political parties are actually promising, to check whether some of these issues that have already been raised through some of the studies that have already been done, whether they are really making reference to those issues.
Okay, and that fundamentally then needs to translate into title for those who qualify for land restitution, whether it is willing buyer, willing seller, or fair value, or expropriation.
Well, absolutely. I mean, for me, really, the critical aspect that we need to look at is we have to balance the manner in which land is actually acquired and used. Because as a country, we are usually fixated with acquiring land. And what happens once that land has been transferred remains largely ignored, and hence the failure we have seen in some of the land reform projects. And I think to address this, we need to make sure that there is this post-settlement support that I've prepared to for the beneficiaries of land reform, including ensuring that people have got titles to the land that has been restored so that they can take advantage of what is out there in the market. They can use that as a basis to, amongst others, have access to finance, But over and above all of these issues that we've mentioned, we need to, for example, look at increasing resources that are earmarked for the support of beneficiaries and ensure that such funds actually reach the intended beneficiaries, And as I've said, land is a very, very emotive issue, and we often experience disputes amongst beneficiaries. We have to get a working dispute resolution mechanism to avoid this dragging for ages and impacting on development, because we can talk about getting land to the people, but we know for a fact that in a number of communities, you find that there are contestations, there's internal fights within communities, etc. And there are no effective mechanisms to ensure that those disputes are resolved. So we need to make sure that we don't, as part of trying to assist people, really, at the same time create chaos and end up people fighting, in some instances actually killing one another.
Yep.
So we need to make sure that we've got effective dispute resolution mechanisms, And without necessarily laboring on this point, innovative mechanisms for financing land reform. I mean, the demand by far outstrips the available public resources. We cannot rely on government to fund land reform. So over and above the restriction on access to finance, more at a broader level, they need to be addressed simultaneously, particularly for previously disadvantaged individuals. Relying just on grants cannot work, as government has got its own budgetary constraints.
Sure. Let's just understand where we are at in terms of land reform and land restitution, in terms of the process that has been ongoing for 30 years. I would like to believe that we are at a point where we know who qualifies for land restitution. Are we there? Or are there additional names that can still be considered at this late stage?
Well, We know that to date, according to information that can be gleaned from the Commission on Restitution and Land Rights, a total of just over 82,000 land claims that have been lodged before the cut-off date, which was the 30th December 1998, have already been settled. Now, if you look at that, this translates just under 4 million hectares, benefiting in excess of 2.3 million beneficiaries. Not mentioning, about 22 billion that has been used for financial compensation, and another 25 billion for the acquisition of land, and 5 billion that has been used in grants. But we know for a fact that based on the information from the Commission itself, that it may take about 30 years as we speak, or more than 170 billion to settle outstanding or rather land claims backlogs with the current budget at the current rate. So you can see that we still have a way to go if we are to really deal with just restitution claims.
What is the number? What is the number? You say 2,000 claims have been settled. 2,000 of how many?
Well, we are saying, this is based on the information that we got from the department, that there were just over 82,000 land claims that were lodged before the cut-off date.
Qualifying land claims?
Yeah, qualifying land claims. Okay. And we are made to understand that these claims have been actually settled.
82,000 have been settled.
Yeah, that's the information that we gleaned from the Commission.
How many remain unsettled?
Well, I don't have that information right with me, except that based on the information that we have, is that it would take them just over 30 years or more than 170 billion to settle outstanding or the backlog. I'm sure we can get that information from the Commission itself. But I'm saying all that I'm saying is that this just really demonstrates that we still have a way to go as a country to really deal with land reform as a program in government.
I hear you.
We need to make sure over and above that at least land parcels that have already been transferred back to communities, because that's part of the challenge. The land that has been transferred to the communities, we need to make sure that such land is actually used productively, because once it's used productively, it will benefit the beneficiaries. Then we'll also be able to create much needed jobs and skills for our people.
Okay. So essentially the only thing that political parties can claim now in their manifestos, if you have a qualifying claim in respect of land, and you've been through the process, then we owe you.
Well, if you've got a valid claim in terms of, and I mean, this is not something that any political party can just promise people. We've got policies, we've got legislation in this country that really governs land reform. So if you have a valid land claim, then such a claim needs to be dealt with in terms of the law.
Agreed. But if you don't have a valid claim, then nothing the political parties are saying to you applies.
Well, if you don't have a valid claim, it means you simply cannot claim that land, and hence no transfer. However, one needs to understand that land restitution is not the only program that government has. We also have land redistribution. This is a program through which government actually buys the land and actually gives the land to Black South Africans more broadly, so that they can work the land.
And that's willing buyer, willing seller.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
So it is important first and foremost to make sure that we've got an elaborate process, that an open and a fair process through which those people who really require land so that they can work the land can access this land. Because we've had complaints about people who are getting land parcels and yet not utilizing them. We've had complaints about people who really, really want to work the land are struggling to have access to the land. And this points to the fact that we need a robust process that needs to be followed when one needs to access the land.
And
I'm talking about land redistribution in this instance.
Sure.
But over and above that, Clarence, we've got vast tracts of land as we speak currently that are, under the control of, for example, your traditional authorities, and these are land parcels where we really need to make sure as a country, and I think government needs to really address these land parcels that are currently under the administration of, for example, your traditional authorities, to make sure that such land parcels...
You are saying, Peter, we got to wrap up. You are saying there are multiple other solutions that can be employed. We can be thinking out the box, and we can expedite the process of settling all the claims and of continuing the redistribution process as well. We're going to have to wrap it there, but we thank you again for your views on this matter. Chief Executive of the Vumelana Advisory Fund, Peter Setou. We're looking at elections. We're looking at land reform in the manifestos. They're pretty commonplace. But whatever the political parties are claiming, I guess then, if you do not have a valid claim, they are not talking to you. So they're trying to trigger you here into believing that maybe just... you can take your neighbor's house, stuff like that. And I think we need to be aware of such mischief at this time. 11:31, Eyewitness News headline series. Natalie Marcus with the last contribution for the morning.
Thank you, Clarence. Good morning.